Welcome back. The Global South Think Tank Dialogue was held in Xiamen on the 2nd of November. More than 50 people, including think tank scholars, political party representatives, and business people from more than 300 emerging markets and developing countries attended the meeting. To give us a recap of the meeting and its objectives is the Secretary to Cabinet, Mr. George Simata. So good evening and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, good evening, madam.
Just to start with, Mr. Simata, what was the purpose and objective of the Global South Think Tank Dialogue?
Maybe just to start before we do the purpose, maybe to explain that I was invited by the International Department of the Communist Party of China Central Committee. And as you correctly said it, the invitation was not only to me, but to several other scholars from 60 emerging markets and developing countries. I was invited as chairman of NIPAM, which is considered to also be our think tank here in Namibia. And therefore, I went there in my capacity as chairman of NIPAM, which is one of the institutions that does research on behalf of government and give policy advice to government. Now, you were talking about what was the purpose and objective. Maybe before we also do that, maybe to explore a little bit on the term Global South, which is a common definition that has been given by the World Bank to include all low and medium income countries, such as in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean. You may recall that in the past, this definition was also referred to countries that are less developed, those countries that are considered to be in the periphery, and also the third world countries. So the purpose really was to explore this definition and by scholars to look at the ways the Global South could work together to develop themselves. So it was more an initiative to engage in a discussion on how the South could help each other, could pull together as countries who are less developed so that they can achieve some level of development.
What were some of the challenges or obstacles that were identified during these discussions and also addressed, of course, for collaboration amongst the Global South countries?
There were few challenges. As you know, South refers to countries that are less developed. And when you are not less developed, there are different stages of development. Some countries, even if they are in the South, would be a little bit more advanced than others. So we say in the general economics that there is North within the South and South within the North. So we now want to make a claim that there is a South, the southern countries are more poorer than the northern countries. Indeed, there could be other countries in the southern regions that are better, that could be referred to the North. So these challenges were identified to say that even if we want to pull together, there are some obstacles because we are not all of us on the same development path. Others are better than us, and others are more advanced, and others on a lower level. So to discuss these challenges, there was a need to have a common direction, to have more research, and to identify on how these challenges could be resolved.
And of course, Dr. Simata, as you mentioned the theme, Global South working together to advance modernization, formed part of the discussions. But how did it relate to the outcomes from this meeting?
You see, Global South as a discussion on itself is trying to unlock the potential in terms of the politics. In fact, it looks first at the history of the politics of the countries, the social development of the countries, the cultural development. So the theme was more to unlock these discussions and to ask researchers to do a lot of work in terms of finding a way. We know we are lumped together with countries, big countries like China, who are also part of the Global South. But strictly speaking, they are much better than some of us, all of us, most of the time. How do these big countries like them help us to come to a better level from the political point of view, from the economic point of view, from the cultural point of view? So these were the discussions that were there that tied to modernizations, working together to obtain modernization. Of course, there was also new things where other people seem to think in the past that modernization is equal to westernization. That may be a myth that is investigated further, because you can modernize without being westernized.
And of course, talk to us, Doctor, about the recommendations that emerged from this dialogue, and more so how government, plans to utilize the outcomes and recommendations from the dialogue and its policies and decision making.
As I indicated, this was an initial meeting. There are no specific recommendations that were given, but there was an agreement that there should be consensus in terms of research going forward. Scholars were invited to produce papers, to write these discussion papers, and to publish as much as possible with regard to the thinking around the South cooperation, with regard to the thinking around the Global South, and how it would benefit all of us. So the recommendation of the agreement was more on the going forward would be more to enhance research capabilities. We here in Namibia should engage with people like at UNAM, at IUM, at NAST to see how we can think towards these issues and digest the concepts, and then write papers that will be discussions for the future. So there would be another meeting maybe in the next 1 year or two, but we have been encouraged to engage and to publish mostly on the issue of Global South and the dialogue that is ongoing.
Well, Dr. Simata, thank you so much for your time this evening, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much indeed.
That was Dr. George Simata speaking to us there. We have some more conversations coming up right after the short break. Stay with us.